Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Hot Mess Moments with Beth and Dylan. I hope you guys are excited for a really spicy episode because we have a lot to talk about today because these two episodes, ooh,
girl.
I felt it. Sorry.
Before we get going with any of that nonsense, I feel like we need to cheers to a successful first episode. Thank you all to everybody who tuned in and supported us in our first episode and our teaser episode. Make sure if you're hearing of anybody who's talking about Lost, the Nanny, or looking for something to do to follow along, encourage them. These are the shows you want to watch. This is the podcast you want to watch with them. So cheers.
Agreed. Cheers. I want to also cheers to us being one of, I think, the only or very few spoiler-free reviews of both these shows.
Agreed.
There are a lot of spoiler-ridden reviews on iTunes and Spotify. No shade to them. That's an amazing thing to but if you want to watch it for the first time, we are the place to be, baby. We are the place to be. So cheers to that.
That was a really bad tongue pop. Hold on.
I'm proud of you. I liked it.
Okay.
All right, cheers. Woo! Okay. So we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
I am loving this. But before we get into that, my name is Dylan Zahner, a.k.a. 8-Bit Dylan, on Twitch, Twitter, all that jazz. I've been a content creator for a long time, and I'm here to just gossip about two of these amazing shows. Beth, where can they find you?
Hi, my name is Beth, also known as AugustaWind11 on Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all the fun things. And I love The Nanny. It's my all-time favorite show. And so I'm so excited to be watching Lost for the first time, completely spoiler-free. I do not know what happens in Lost or anything like that. Dylan has never watched The Nanny, so he is completely unspoiled as to what happens throughout the series. And so we are so excited to discuss these two shows tonight. We're going to start off with The Nanny. And before we get going, I want everyone to know how much of a super fan I am.
Yeah, tell him, girl.
With The Nanny. Because we said, why don't we make it a point to watch the episodes together? No talking, we'll save it for the podcast, that kind of thing. So Dylan fires up HBO Max, which, as some of you may not know, it is now officially, The Nanny is on HBO Max as of Thursday, April 1st, and no, that is no April Fool's joke. And so we started watching it, and the episode that comes up is entitled The Nook Schlep, and I went, I'm pretty sure that's the fourth episode, but okay. I thought the second one was Smoke Caught in Your Lies. Okay, whatever. And we watched the whole episode of the Nook Schlep, and it's good, and we're excited about it. And then I'm like, this still doesn't seem right. So I went on and I checked against all different, my DVD set and everything. The Nook Schlep is episode 4. I was right. And Smoke Caught in Your Lies is episode 2. So HBO Max actually has them all sorts of out of order.
Yeah. So it's not just the second and the fourth episode. My husband and I looked into it, and HBO Max has pretty much every single episode out of order. So just letting everyone know, for the purposes of this podcast, we are going to be reviewing them in actual release order, not in the order that HBO Max has them listed in. Hopefully HBO Max can fix that going forward, because we'll get into that a little bit more. There's a big difference in tone between the Nook Schlep and the actual episode 2 that we watched today. We'll talk about that when we get into our review of The Nanny, but just for all intents and purposes, at the end of our reviews of The Nanny, we will talk about what the next episode is that we're going to be reviewing. So that way you know which one to watch on HBO Max, and you're not stunned or surprised by anything like that.
Correct. And if I were you, if you're watching The Nanny for the first time, I would find a list online of what the episode order is. I believe it's even just on the basic Wikipedia. If you go to seasons and then the episodes, follow that list along, because even though it's a sitcom and for the most part the order doesn't matter, there are going to be unpredictable episodes where you need to watch that one before something else. Just what happens with the for tone, especially in the very beginning when they're setting up how the chemistry of the show is going to work. They're still setting up characters and working out some of the kinks as a new cast comes together, kind of thing. So
totally.
right.
let's get into the nanny.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I'm so excited. All right, so just to remind everyone, the episode that we're going to be reviewing today is Smoke Gets in Your Lies, the second episode of season 1. And my initial thoughts of this episode, after watching what is to be the 4th episode and watching the first episode, I don't know if this one hit as hard as the others do, just because you could tell that this was their first episode post-pilot. Everyone was trying to find their comedic timing. This one relies a lot on dated references that really flew over my head. Many of the jokes, punchlines didn't land, but I still really loved this episode because it was tackling a topic that I feel like even nowadays is kind of like, ooh, there's like a kid who's super young who gets into smoking. And I think even nowadays, most sitcoms wouldn't go in that direction. And so I applaud The Nanny for going that route. I also, weirdly, in this episode, found myself rooting for the dad more than I was Fran
or anybody else.
Which is a complete change from episode 1 where I couldn't stand the dad. So that actually, I'll get into that later, kind of gave me more emotional depth to the dad, and I actually liked him in this episode as opposed to the first episode. I also like Cece in this episode. I thought Cece made some great points. I'll get into that later if I can remember exactly the points that she made, but basically she was like, Fran's a mess. And I was like, you know what? Fran is a mess by the end of this episode.
Totally. What I think you're getting at, and what we'll start to see over, especially the next few episodes, because as you said, you did get to skip ahead a little bit and watch episode 4, which had much more sense of comedic timing, and they've kind of worked out the 90s references, the Yiddish references, the things that people are going to get. So there are going to be a lot of jokes that, you know, we're just too young to understand. And I have watched the show hundreds of times, and there's still jokes that I don't quite get, or people that I don't know who they're talking about, and I just like don't care enough to like actually look them up. But in this one, I mean, they're talking about Kennedys. So if you were like knew about the Kennedys in the 80s and 90s, like, okay, then you get the John references and like all those different kinds of things. But it is what it is. And what I like the most like about this particular episode is it does bring me back to like, I don't know if you were like this at all, Dylan, because you and I were both 90s kids, but like this comes back to the days of Dare, and this comes back to like how much they spent so much time telling us to not smoke, because we were really the first generation that had substantiated evidence that said, don't smoke, kids should not be smoking, smoking is bad, look at all the stuff they're putting in cigarettes. And like, to reference this, my mom was born to a woman who smoked all the way through pregnancies and all that kind of stuff because it wasn't seen as a big deal. So by the time my mom has kids, it is a big deal. Don't smoke. We start seeing smoking areas of restaurants and non-smoking go away to the point where it's just no smoking inside. So that happens over the course of the 90s and early 2000s. So that's why an episode like this feels a little bit more like an after-school special than it does like a comedy.
No, I totally, and I think I wrote that in my notes as well, where it was kind of like, I get the message you're trying to send here, but it's very one note. Like, it's just like smoking's bad. That's like all we're going to talk about today. But let's get into like the actual recap of the episode.
Sure.
If I had to rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it a 5. Just because so many of the jokes flew over my head. So we're starting off, and I'm going to talk about this now. The outfit of the episode for me is the pink pinstripe suit blazer look. Oh, and bonus points for Val coming in with the beautiful bow like suit shirt. Love it. So we start the episode. I'm dropping dead. I was like, same. I'm literally same. So we start off with Val coming to visit the mansion of sorts that Fran lives in. And I got why they brought this in. I thought about it like midway through the episode. I was like, what was the purpose of the Val scene in the beginning? But it's to get Fran talking about her childhood and talking about this guy named Lenny, who is kind of this like bad boy. The reason they start talking about Lenny is because Brighton and the rest of the kids show up. we've got this weird B-side plot with Maggie having a pimple, which is kind of glossed over really quickly.
Yeah.
But the main point of the scene is because Brighton is weirdly intrigued to everything that Fran is talking about. We learn by the end it's likely because Brighton cares about Fran. Fran is the only nanny that has really broken through to Brighton since.
Yeah, they have a connection, and he hasn't connected with anybody else. So, who's been a nanny? Sorry.
So I'm curious in this beginning scene when they're talking about Lenny.
Yeah.
Your first time when you were watching this, what were your thoughts?
Okay, so I don't remember the first time I watched a lot of these episodes. In particular, I agree with you. I actually think this is one of the worst episodes of the entirety of the series, which is another reason why I was like, we need to watch this in order because I promise it gets better. But this is, for me, like a solid 3 out of 10 episodes. So when I've watched it, it's purely because I think what you'll find, especially in the opening 2 seasons, is that they spend a lot of time with plot points for one child at a time. And so this was obviously Brighton needed the most behavioral work, so we're going to focus on this. And we will talk about this when we actually talk about the Nook Schlepp in a couple weeks, but that one's about Maggie. We'll see Gracie's episode come up soon, like all those different kinds of things, right? And I think what they needed to do was immediately kick off with, obviously Brighton has like the most like issues with nannies and such. So what are we going to do to set him up? And so when I first watched this, and when I go back and I watch it, I always think of it through the lens of this is necessary exposition. This is what it is. But I feel like this opening scene, it establishes a little bit more of the Val-Fran friendship, and it also shows that Brighton thinks of himself as this bad boy, but he's actually just an entitled little white rich kid. So, like, there's really, he's not actually bad. He's just an annoying little twerp kind of thing.
Exactly. And I think you hit the nail on the head where we are kind of seeing this other side to Brighton where we didn't really. Brighton was very one note. I say that a lot, but he was one note in the first episode. So I did like that we got to see a little bit more vulnerability from Brighton, where he's realizing maybe I'm not as cool as I think I am. Maybe I can be cooler.
Or there are badder people out there. I want to try to be bad. That kind of thing.
I love the scene though after this where Brighton, or this might have been before, where Brighton is talking about Star Trek. And in my headcanon, Brighton grows up to be the biggest Trekkie to ever exist. He makes like a Scotty reference. And I was like, I love Brighton even more. For those that don't know, I love Star Trek. Anyway, Nanny it admits or talks about being from beauty school, which I think is a cool flavoring of her past that we learn. She said she was on the dean's list. We don't know if that's true or not because she likes to embellish her past a lot. But I thought that was really cool that we got a little bit of a look into the nanny's past. And I think that's the purpose of this pimple plot, is to be like, the nanny's in beauty school. I also wrote down in my notes, because they're having this conversation within the kitchen, this is when we're introduced to more of this plot about the father being into theater productions, and we learn that he's trying to make a musical. I don't know if that's going to get, I'm assuming it's going to get hinted on throughout the rest of the first season, where kind of this like overarching plot with the dad trying to produce this musical, and he's in this process of trying to find a composer for this specific production he's trying to put on. It's really funny that in the beginning, Beth was talking about there's going to be a character introduced in episode 2 that's going to be recurring. And there's a scene with a composer, and I was like, please don't tell me this composer is this character.
No! Oh my God.
Because I was like, he's so awful. I hate him.
No. And here's the thing, too. I will say this. This isn't a spoiler, but it just... It's just so you have an idea. Like, there are certain times in The Nanny where he's focused on the same show, and then there's like from one week to the next week, it could be a completely different show that he's producing. So like, there is no sense of like actual reality when it comes to the plays that he's producing. It's just the show in this sense that he is incredibly disconnected from his kids. He's incredibly disconnected to what's happening in his own household, and it's really like the people in the know are the people who work in his household, you know, and he focuses all of his time and his resources into his work. And obviously he loves his kids, but he's just very like distant at arm's length with them. So the whole purpose of the point in the kitchen is Brighton has this little flyer that there's a school carnival, and Fran really thinks it'd be great if not only the whole family went, but that includes Maxwell, the father. Yep. He should be spending as much time with them as she does, like on the weekends especially. And he says that he can't, and those kind of things. So that's really what I feel like the point of all of this is too, totally. Is to show like where is the relationship between the family members when Fran first enters their lives versus where we're going to see them on the last episodes of season 6.
Totally. And I also, when I heard carnival at a school, I was like, ooh, are they talking about Scholastic Book Fair? And then I was like, no, they're rich.
Oh my God, I loved the Scholastic.
Same.
I've never been so excited to buy a friggin' eraser for a pencil.
Same. Scholastic Book Fairs, that's when I knew I was gay. Because, girl... Oh,
there was nothing camper.
Crack.
There was no camper event in elementary school than a Scholastic book fair.
Oh my God. I was like, I would go through my nerdy little ass and be like, I want this cheat code book. I want this cheat code book. Girl, I want the Guinness Book of World Records number 1998 or whatever. And I would just go through. My family was poor. We couldn't afford any of this. But I would walk through and I would grab all of them. I would look through them. I'd read through them. I was that kid.
But I just love that they fully they used capitalism to trick kids into like being excited about school supplies like 3/4 of the way through a school year. Like kids get excited about school supplies and books at 2 times a year when they're buying stuff for the beginning of the school year and at the Scholastic Book Fair. Like that is literally what that just made my night that you just mentioned that.
I wonder if they still have them. I have no idea. If any of you know if Scholastic, if they're still happening, please let us know, because I want to know that other children are experiencing the joy that is a Scholastic Book Fair. But the point I was trying to make here, though, is
sorry, it wasn't about the book fair.
No, but like Scholastic Book Fair is what I had in my mind, and then they're like carnivals and party games. I'm like, what rich kid carnival school is this? What is happening?
Yeah, we have to remember that these kids go to private school, like, and there's a headmaster and all these different kinds of things. But that sets up what the next part of this is, which is Brighton comes home from school and he makes fun of. Or no, he tries to be very nice to Maggie. Yeah. And he says, you look really nice. You look really beautiful. And she doesn't believe him, tells him to shut up, goes upstairs. And then he pulls this whole like, we did handwritten analysis today in school and I found out I'm really vulnerable. And Fran plays right into it. Oh, yeah, really? Maybe you can analyze my handwriting. Oh, well, I would love, let me see if I have a piece of paper. Pulls out and he actually has a note that she needs to sign that he's been caught smoking.
Oh, dun, dun, dun. My God. I was shocked at this plot line. I thought when I read Smoke Gets in Your Lies, I did not think we're going to get a B, or not a B plot. Why do I keep saying that? That's like my word of the night, B plot.
B plot.
B plot. I did not realize we were going to get a plot of Brighton getting into smoking. This kid looks like he's like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10. I don't know kids.
So
he's 4.
I've actually fully never known what the ages fully are. I believe in the beginning of this series, Maggie is 14. I think Brighton is 10 or 11. And I think Grace is 7. And I won't get into anything more. Once we get to the episode where that kind of is explained, I will explain why I believe those are the ages. But yes, this is a kid that is definitely too young to even be experimenting with the idea of smoking.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm all yuck is yum, you know, different strokes for different folks.
I'm
kidding. I just wanted to see your reaction. I'm kidding.
Dylan's over here like, yeah, kids can start smoking if they want. Come on. Who cares?
You want to start smoking? I just imagine that Yetta, which we introduced to later in the episode, when she was a child, she's like, all right, babies, let's go
Look at it.
Let's go get our allowance and get ourselves some cigs.
Like, we're going to get some cigs and some babka. It's going to be great. Oh, my God. Yeah.
No, don't smoke. Don't smoke.
Don't
kids.
smoke, kids. Or adults. I mean,
Yeah.
You're an adult. You can make your own decisions. I would encourage you not to smoke or vape, but whatever.
Yes. So
as I say here with a drink. What's up?
I'm like fully downing,
Don't
shotgunning
smoke,
wine.
kids. Oh, you know.
Glug, glug, glug. So then we are getting into where Fran is attempting to tell. I always forget the father's name. I just call him Mr. Maxwell is right. I always want to call him Mr. Sheffield. But Maxwell.
Well, to be fair, they only really call him Mr. Sheffield. And the person who calls him Maxwell is Cece. And so if she's not in the scene, then you're not going to hear Maxwell.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Fran tells Maxwell about Brighton, or she attempts to. And this is at the point in the episode where I was actually rooting for the father and Cece, because I was like, Fran, first off, not the time and place. Like, he's clearly busy, like, trying to, like, produce this show. But also, like, just, it's not that big of a deal, girl. Like, I mean, it is that big of a deal, but she
for the plot, it's a big deal,
for the
Dylan.
plot, I guess, yeah, for the plot, I'm overthinking it. But it leads us into a hilarious bit that I really wish they would have played up on, which was the evil eye. Because that's where I got a real good chuckle when she was like, oh yeah, the evil eye, it's so scary. And then the painting falls.
And they did like the 70s like kind of like sound from like horror movies, like as if it was Halloween or something like that. And it was just, it's so good. But they didn't do that as a recurring joke.
Yeah, I would have loved that. I would have loved if like she just had bad luck until she admitted that she did something, and they just drop it the next day. She's like, I got some indigestion. It's not because of my guilty conscience. And I'm
I feel like this is where they're still trying to find their footing of like, how do we do recurring jokes, memes, those kind of things throughout an episode. But this was a missed opportunity. For sure.
It's and that's completely fine. They're not going to be running at 100.
Right.
And like you said, this is like one of the worst episodes.
It's like a build-up. By far, it is one of the worst episodes. I definitely feel like what they're trying to do in a weird way is set up that you're going to meet Grandma Yetta, because they make reference that she's the one, the energy of the third eye. Is it third eye? What, I can't even remember.
The evil eye.
Oh my God. Wine's already getting to me. No, the evil eye, and like that she's like the source of its power. But then like it's such a weird cut to actually be introduced to Yetta. So I mean, eventually comes out over breakfast that Brighton was caught smoking, and that they catch it, or that he got the idea from Fran. Fran actually goes again in a very inappropriate moment to Maxwell's casting and interrupts it to tell him, oh, actually, I was the one that got Brighton into it. And that's where they discover, like, oh, actually, Brighton really does care for Fran. Otherwise, he would have outed her to Maxwell. And they decide, oh, my God, fear is the best way to actually get him to not ever want to smoke again. So cut to where we get to see one of the best characters of all time.
Oh, Yetta. Okay, first off, before we get to Yetta, I have to comment on the fact that the Carol Channing is in this episode for a hot cameo. I didn't realize it was Carol. Oh, I knew it was Carol Channing, but I didn't think they actually got Carol Channing in the episode. So I was like, who is this Carol Channing looking person in my notes? Until I realized, oh, wow, they really got Carol Channing to show up for like 2 seconds in this episode. The evil eye.
Did you hear that?
Yes! Something just, okay, for those that are on audio only, I literally just saw something fall behind Beth.
I don't know what fell.
I just saw it. Beth, can you go check and see? It's so scary.
I don't want to get up on camera in my pants.
Okay. We'll just,
even though Dylan can attest, my booty look like it take up a whole zip code in these pants.
Okay,
but no.
I will say that actually scared me. And the murderer that's behind you, can you just wait until the end of the podcast before you jump out?
Okay, so I know that you can't hear a murderer ghost person that's behind me because I have headphones in, but we're requesting that you wait until the end of the podcast. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely.
So we get to the moment with Yetta. And Yetta is probably one of my favorite characters just in terms of concept alone, because Oh my God. She reminds me of my actual grandma so much. My grandma literally wore that jacket, I think, for like
The wind jacket.
7 years of my life. A solid 7, 8 years of my life, she wore that. She smoked. She had the giant thick glasses. I literally saw my grandma on this show, and I was so happy.
I could tell that you were freaking the F out because I looked over at you and you literally were like, I know this woman.
I was like, yes, I grew up with her. Smoking everything.
This is what I love the most, right? So I think that what this show does a really great job with is, regardless of the fact that Fran and her family are Jewish and from Queens, which would only really relate to the people who are Jewish and from Queens, they find ways to make characters that grew up in like a socioeconomic class, like poorer, that kind of thing, be relatable in so many different ways. Like, oh yeah, like I'm not Jewish, but I had moments where like when I grew up, like where we couldn't afford much, you know? So I'm sitting back and I'm like, oh, I can understand. Oh, I know that jacket. And I know that this kind of home feeling for the older people. Like, oh, I know when they have like the plastic on the furniture. I had people in my life who had plastic on their furniture. Like those kind of things are like, what I think is really great about the show is they make it a universal thing that people like recognized in the 90s and prior to the 90s as well. And that's, you know, this whole show is really about Fran, who is somebody who has never had like a silver spoon in her mouth, discovering this life of luxury while this family who has never known any kind of connection and have like really just focused on money and those kind of things, learning that money isn't everything. Like, so this sets it up in that way.
Absolutely. And there's that absolutely for the episode. There you
Absolutely.
go. I get one. I also just need to make a comment about Yetta's makeup because that pink lip with that pink blush was a serve.
Trixie Mattel could never.
Trixie, I'm pretty sure, sponsored Yetta in the 90s specifically for this episode.
Okay, I think that Trixie just stole Yetta's makeup and decided to go.
I didn't say it. You said it.
Shots
were fired.
Shots are fired. Clip this and send it to Trixie. And what?
And
I'll confront her. I'll
fight her. I'll fight her to my face.
Yeah,
okay. So overall, this episode of The Nanny obviously wasn't the best. It had a lot of dated references. It had a lot of jokes that just didn't land. I am excited going forward, though, because now we have Yetta. We have been introduced to Yetta, and I cannot wait to see more of Yetta. Can't wait to see more of my grandma on screen.
And that's the thing that I think, so at least when we watched the Nuchschlepp, not to give anything away, Yetta does not appear there. So that's why I was actually kind of happy that if we had to watch any show out of order, thankfully it was the Nuchschlepp episode. So we'll go into detail with that in 2 weeks' time when technically we're going over episode 4.
Okay.
But let's transition, shall we?
Yes, I'm
away
so excited.
From The Nanny and into Lost, because I have thoughts. I have lots of theories. I have things that I don't know how to process that happened after watching the second episode of Lost for my first time. Is there anything that you want to set up before I go into like generally describing what I think happened? I think happened is like a recurring thing I'm going to say. I think this is what happened. I'm not sure.
All I want to say is after watching these first 2 episodes of Lost, it reignited my need to binge watch this series, and I can't. And it's driving me insane because I was getting those feelings again seeing you watch this episode where I was just like, that was me, girl. That was me. I reacted the same way the first time I watched this. And I will say I have been loving people leaving comments on our Twitter, in our individual Discords, PMing me, DMing me. They're reacting the same way you are. They are freaking out watching Lost the first time, and it makes me so happy that we can like talk about it. Okay, so tell me your thoughts.
Okay, so overall, I thought this was a super strong, quote unquote, part 2 to the pilot. it had so many twists and turns. Like the first episode did a good job of like showing like the chaos of the situation. This one was less about the chaos and more about like further character development and further questions. And it just sets up that I feel like at the end of every episode, you're going to have one or two more questions and theories, and maybe not any questions answered. Although I got some questions immediately answered. So I will be going through this as the way I took notes to go through. So instead of going like scene by scene and saying like, this is exactly what happens in this scene, what I'm going to do is basically go through my notes, which are in order of the episode.
I love that.
So in the very beginning, the first thing I wrote down is Charlie withdrawing? Because you see him on the plane as a flashback, kind of shaking and you know, staying in one spot, and then like the stewardess checks in on him, and the flight attendant does, and she says, you know, are you okay? And he's basically tells her to back off. And then he gets up and dashes to the front of the plane, which is what we saw in the very beginning episode with Matthew Fox's character. What's his name?
Jack.
Jack. Okay, with Jack. And so he goes to the front of the plane. You see him take out some kind of drug. I'm not a drug expert, so I don't know what it was. I assumed it was some kind of cocaine, but that shit was not white. It was not white. It looked like brown sugar to me, in which case I get it, girl. If you having a withdrawal from brown sugar, I'm there with you. I will absolutely take a little bit, put that in my mouth and go, yeah, I feel much better now. That is me. But
you don't know about that toilet brown sugar? You don't know about that toilet brown sugar?
I love it. It makes you feel real good. No. So he goes up to the front of the plane, and they're trying to get him out of the plane, and that's when the plane really starts to crash. He almost gets attacked by a serving tray, like all this other stuff. But I have an issue with this.
Oh, tell me. I have an answer for you. He's not.
Charlie's at the front of the plane.
He's not. Yes,
he is.
No, he's not. So I knew you were going to bring this up. If you watch, what they did is when he avoids the tray and he starts crawling forward, you can tell that they cut it because you can see the curtain that divides the front half of the plane and the middle of the plane behind him as he climbs into the seat. So it's very like...
A curtain is not protecting you from being sucked into the void as it comes out.
Agreed.
No. My whole process is if he's not in the front of the plane, he should have been yeeted into the air as like part of this had been broken away because he's so close to where it breaks. How is he not yeeted? Like,
agreed.
So I'm going to need some more shit. But I could tell that you could clock me because I'm going, what the fuck? He's in the front! Like on mute, and I'm like yelling at the screen. Yeah. But so that's the first thing we see. The next thing we see is that Vincent, the dog, actually belongs to, is it Walt? Walt is the little boy?
Yeah, so Walt is the boy. Yeah, he's looking for Vincent. Okay,
and so this is a recurring thing throughout the entire episode. Vincent is out in the shallow parts of the jungle from the beach trying to look for Vincent, and he actually discovers some handcuffs instead. And his father comes around, yells at him for being away, and his father's basically like, Vincent has to be dead. Like, there's no way that Vincent's made it. To the point where later in the episode, he fully, like, you're the worst father in a crisis situation. He literally looks at his son and goes, I promise you that, whenever we get off here, I'll buy you another dog. Fuck off. That is not the time. Read the room. Read the beach.
Right?
Read the beach.
Read the beach. Read
this
the beach.
This is not the time. This is not the time. And then also, when Vincent is in the jungle, I get the first real sense of what the jungle sounds are in the background. And the ambiance is like, it sounds like people screaming. It doesn't sound like even like a monkey screaming or something like that you might be used to. These are not normal jungle sound effects. So I wrote, sounds like weird screams in the jungle, would not go in, is what I put there.
Interesting. So that's a very interesting observation.
Okay, so that's what I got. And then the handcuffs, they go back to the beach. There's a fight between Syed and MAGA dude. I'm just calling it. He's clearly a Trump supporter. What's his name?
Saeed and Sawyer.
Saeed and Sawyer. Okay, so Sawyer. Sawyer voted for Trump. We all know. We've been new. This is what happened here.
We do. If this took place in 2021.
Yeah, he voted for Trump.
He voted for Trump.
So,
yeah.
So he is going off on essentially a racist tangent and is basically blaming and saying that Saeed is the person that was the prisoner on board because he had his hands underneath the blanket and he like doesn't trust them. They're in a fist fight and all this other stuff. Saeed.
I want to get your thoughts real quick in the specific scene. So in this specific scene, we notice that Sawyer is just mean to everyone.
Yeah, because he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, coming up with all these nicknames for people. He calls Hurley Lardo. He calls Jack Doc, like all of these vicious names. But I want to get your thoughts because this came out... this obviously came out after 9/11, but that wound was still fresh. Mm-hmm. I want to know what your thoughts were watching this in 2021 with a topic like this being covered, and we're still seeing this kind of racism very prolific in our society today.
Yeah, I mean, for me in 2021... it's like I'm so used to people exposing how awful they are through various different kinds of videos that we see with people talking like just being completely racist or committing all these microaggressions or just being outwardly awful people and being unapologetic for it. For me, I was just like, honestly, this doesn't seem that shocking. It just further like, okay, here we go. Just another fucking person I'm not going to like. Well, here we are. And I have to imagine that if I watched this in 2004, 2005 when it came out,
somewhere
I have to imagine that I would have been like, oh my God, I can't believe that somebody is this outwardly awful. Like there would probably be a slight, also because I was fully in high school at the time. So there's a naivete that you have about the world when you are a privileged white girl like I am at a homogenous school zone. Like I would probably be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that somebody would be this awful, blah, blah, blah. But I have to say, like, in the context of 2021, I'm like, good. I'm happy he's exposing himself because if I were on the island with him and I had to choose between saving him and saving my own ass, bye. I don't need you anymore. Like, I just, like, you exposed yourself. Like, you can work for yourself then. Like, I don't need to, like, do anything to save you.
Exactly. Feed him to the polar bear.
Yes. Okay, so we need to get into this. Well, yeah, we'll get into that. So basically, Saeed says, let me see the transceiver, or is that what it's called, the transceiver?
Yeah, the transceiver, yeah.
Okay, and he said it's likely that the batteries are fine, it's just that the radio's dead, and I used to work in tech, so I can get this. So he reveals to Hurley that he actually used to fight in the Gulf War. Hurley and him find out that they actually fought on, not Hurley, but his friend, fought on opposite sides of the Gulf War, which I think this is a really important kind of moment.
Totally.
And I said it shows, I wrote down, the Saeed Hurley convo shows opposite sides can and need to come together in crisis, but just generally, like, you're only, like in this case of war, you're only fighting because like you have your allegiance to this other person. Doesn't take away the humanity of the other side. Like there are also other people doing what they need to do in order to survive or what they think is right? So I thought that was really powerful. And I would have to imagine that in the context of 2004, when we have the newest version of the Gulf War happening, that this was a really, really important conversation to have.
Oh, yeah. I think it also speaks very highly of both Saeed and Hurley's characters, that Hurley can hear that and know that his friend fought on the opposite side and just is able to bury that away and is just completely cool with Saeed and is like, you're good, dude. I like you. And I think it speaks to their character.
It speaks to the character, and you also have to imagine that in 2004, when you have someone who you know, that most people would in their mind be like, oh, this is a person that would be fighting against America, like just based off of his looks and his race or his ethnicity or something like that. And then it comes out that he actually fought on the opposite side for the Gulf War. Like, I have to imagine that for most people, this was probably complicated, because I know that they set up Saeed to be a very likable character, because at the end of this episode, he's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So I love that the show, I have to say, for early 2000s, very diverse and leans really hard into challenging people's preconceptions of race or ethnicity, and I really, really appreciate it. We move to the next thing, though. I'm not happy about this. Sun is so controlled by what's his name?
Jin.
I don't know. Jin, because I don't think we've actually heard his name in the show yet.
No, yeah.
But Jin, I don't know if this is his wife or what their relationship is, but Jin is very much controlling Sun. She had a single button undone up the very top that didn't even let like her clavicle or collarbone or whatever exposed. And at one point, he had the nerve, the gall, the gumption to tell her, you better button that up.
Right.
And she buttons it up. And I was 2021 disgusted with this. I was like, bitch, you better not button that up. If I were you, I'd unbutton the rest and go, you like these? What do you want,
like
bitch?
these?
Come on.
Ooh.
Do you like my bitties?
Yeah, just show full areola on ABC. Could you imagine?
The nipples are the eyes of the face. A Bimini Bomb Boulash reference there. Nipples. But yeah, I am not a fan of Jin. And okay. I like that Jin went around trying to get people to eat. I guess it was some kind of,
it's like
seafood
urchin or something.
Or something like that. It looked like mandarin orange slices.
Yeah,
so I was like, yeah, I would take that, whatever. We also have a moment where the woman who is pregnant, what's her name?
Claire.
Claire speaks with Shannon on the beach, and she lets Shannon. Shannon's the entitled brat. And I recognized her. So this was the episode where I recognized all the actors from other places. So I was like, oh, she's from Twilight. Okay, got you. Oh, okay, she's from Once Upon a Time. I got you. Okay, great.
Oh,
so Claire plays Belle in Once Upon a Time.
You'll notice if you've ever seen Once Upon a Time, many actors from Lost show up in Once Upon a Time later.
Ah, okay, well, here we go. Because I love that show.
I think they're both owned by ABC.
Yeah.
So, there's a ton of characters that transition over to that show.
That makes sense because I think Once Upon a Time came out in 2011 or 12. So this was probably around the time that Lost was ending. Yep. So it makes sense to put them into the new project. But regardless, Claire lets it slip that her baby hasn't actually kicked or moved around since the plane crashed. So obviously I'm thinking, woo, that's bad. Probably lost the baby, but she's you can tell that she's trying really hard to keep it on the inside. And I think that this actually really affects Shannon, even though Shannon's not really saying anything. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think this actually, the more we talk about it, I think this is the linchpin that changes Shannon's mindset on her being stuck on this island. And that's why we have that scene later where she's crying at the death of the person that she was sitting next to on the plane, because she just learned that Claire's baby could be dead. And I think that's the thing that snaps in her head. She's like, this is real. We're not getting off this island.
Yeah, I think that Shannon is having a defense mechanism that is similar to shock, but that is... It's a way to be like, nope, everything's fine. I'm going to choose to ignore all the problems right now because if you can ignore it, then it can't get to you. And I think that absolutely it makes sense that at this point, I don't know how many days they've been on the island. I would assume a couple.
Yeah, I think it's 3 or 4 days. Three or 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
That it's probably getting to her and the transceiver's not working. And there's all these different pieces of information come in to kind of tell her that in her mind, everything that she's built up to say, oh, people are on their way. They know where we are. We're going to get set. Okay, I didn't want the chocolate, all those different kinds of things. If she's anything like me, first, actually, she's not because I would never turn down chocolate. I don't even care. But secondly, if she was like me, I would be the girl that was like, I could have had that chocolate bar 2 days ago. I would.
Right?
Of course I'm going to have a breakdown.
I could have had, all of my cravings fulfilled while on this island. Could you imagine being stuck on an island and not being able to fulfill your cravings? No chocolate, no
and have it not be for a game show to win $1 million? I cannot.
Right? Jeff Probst comes out with Vincent. Vincent making the little noises.
The family visit. The family visit is
like the Vince. No, that's Chewbacca. Okay, sorry, go on. The family visit.
The family visit. I would die if Jeff Probst ever has a confessional, he comes on and he was just like, Survivor's ready. Survivors really have a different feeling. Show lost. Y'all survived. You guys are all literally survivors. All right, I'm gonna have all of you climb up this huge ass mountain to see if you can get a transceiver schedule. So that is actually the next part of this. So there's a group that decided to do an exposition because Saeed says we could just waste the battery and send blind signals out. Or we should try to get up higher and see if we can actually get some bars, in which case we could be conserving it for when we have bars and try to hear other distresses. So Kate decides she's going to climb. Saeed goes. Shannon and her brother, what's her brother's name?
Boone.
They go because Shannon just wants to do something now, I guess. And then Charlie decides to go because he's got his drugs and he's... What do you want to do after you've done drugs? A really intense hike. That's apparently what you want to do.
I guess. Burn it all off.
And then in the next scene, we do see, this isn't, I don't think that important what happens, but Jin walks away and Sun unbuttons the shirt like a defiant boss bitch, I wrote. Like a defiant boss bitch.
That scene, oh, it's so good. Sun's just like, ooh, I'm going to fucking show my... lower neck.
I just want you to know, I have, up until this point, I've basically said all these things, but here we go. Unbuttoned shirt like a defiant boss bitch. Shannon is annoying. Chain smoker is a Trump supporter. For sure! Those are my notes in that order.
I love
it.
Then
they get up, they climb up this, to the very top of the mountain. And
one piece, sorry to interject. Sawyer also joins them.
Oh, Sawyer. Yes.
Because that's a big piece later.
It's a big piece. So they get up there, and actually Sawyer and Saeed are arguing, and they yell for a second, and then all of a sudden they start hearing grumbles and growls like something's coming at them, and so they start to run away, but Sawyer pulls out a handgun, and wastes all the bullets. I'm sorry. There's no way that you shoot a polar bear that many times and it barely dies. I'm sorry about it. Like, you have to have such shit aim. But he just stands there planted and shoots a handgun and kills a polar bear. And I wrote, don't yell in the jungle, first of all. And then I wrote, polar bear? WTF. So, they're trying to figure out, how is there a polar bear here? So... my initial theory is there's something...
Let's go. Theory time. Let's go.
My feeling is that this island is kind of like a Bermuda Triangle in the sense that, like, it has wrapped up... It's got, like, some kind of, like thing that draws things into it, but you can't ever leave. So it's I feel like we're going to see things that make no sense to be on this island. I think we're going to eventually find other people because we'll get to that in a second. And I think that you're going to find like, maybe there's like anachronisms here. Like maybe there are like things like extinct animals on this island. Like, are there like dinosaurs? Is that like what like the thing is? Are there things from the future? Is this place not exist in time? Like, those are the things that come to my mind. Like, well, I think about this because I was like, there's no way that even if somebody came through and like they were like charting polar bears somewhere, like there's no way that a polar bear just survives in this kind of climate, right? So there's got to be something different about this that brings all these different things together. So that's, I feel like it's some kind of Bermuda Triangle where people and things and other animals and plants and such make no sense on there, but they somehow get trapped there. And I don't know how, but I think that's just how.
That's a good theory. That's the theory of the episode, everyone. So
it's my theory of the episode.
Yeah, I like it.
So then we go to Jack and Hurley trying to take the shrapnel out of the guy. And because Jack basically says, we have reached a point where if help was going to come, then we'd keep the shrapnel in. But now we need to try to find a way to control the bleeding. So he goes through, tries to find some antibiotics and all these different kinds of things to try to see if I can control the bleeding. And then if I can, make sure he doesn't go into sepsis and die. And he enlists the help of Hurley, who's not good with blood. And Hurley promptly faints on top of the face of the dude. that died.
Love this scene.
It's so good because I'm sitting there like, well, Curly just fucking killed him. I mean, like that's what I thought was. I was like, this has nothing to do with the size at all, but like the size doesn't help. But all I could think about is if you are a person who is already like barely breathing and alive, and you have a full-on adult human being pass out on your damn face.
Friday night.
No.
Friday night.
Listen,
honestly,
honey,
for
Fridays.
some people. Friday night, have a full man just pass out on your face. Some people pay money for that.
Lovely, gal. Lovely.
I do want to point out before this, there is a scene that resonated really well with me. There's two specific scenes that are really important. One is we see Claire have this moment with Jin that her baby starts kicking again. And Claire has this renewed hope where she's like, oh my goodness, my baby's alive. It's well.
Yeah, so that's interesting to me too. So I feel like this also goes into some kind of anachronism thing, right? Where I don't know if Claire has been eating or what it is, but it's weird to me that the moment she eats, all of a sudden the baby kicks.
Okay.
So
yeah.
This also goes in some capacity. I feel like either time stops when they're on the island until like something makes it start again. I don't know.
No. Okay.
I don't know.
I like that.
I don't know. Like,
Girl,
I feel like
get the wheels moving. I like this.
I don't know. This is the thing. When it comes to Lost, I'm gonna just basically spout things without any
I love it.
understanding or reasoning, but just like what my feelings are. So we got that.
There's also another scene before this that I'm curious what your thoughts on. There's a scene between Walt and Locke where Locke is
his
playing.
dad?
No, Locke is the guy that you thought was the homeless guy in our character evaluation.
Oh, time
or like,
out.
yeah.
Time out. Okay, so Locke and Grace from The Nanny had something in common. Do you know what it was?
Wait, what was it?
Locke in the first pilot episode opens and smiles with like the orange in his mouth. And in the episode 2 of The Nanny, when they're giving Maggie like basically kind of like a facial thing steaming, Fran takes the orange rinds that from what Maggie's eating and she does this like smile with like the orange. And I literally in my mind went, this is how the shows are connected. They're connected through the power of orange smiles.
They're in the same cinematic universe. We knew all along. I want to get your thoughts,
This is where it's
though.
revealed where Locke is actually Gracie Sheffield.
Yes, I would love that. Please. Writers, get on that.
Yeah,
I'm curious about your thoughts on the scene, though, because we do learn some more information about, like, Walt's mom is dead. He had been living in Australia for a while. And then there's this
2 weeks later, he's in a plane crash.
Yeah.
And Locke literally goes, "You're having a tough month, aren't you?" And he goes, "Yeah, I guess." I would love to have that attitude if someone, like, if my mom died and then I'm in a plane crash too. Like, I need to be that kid. Because I know that's not healthy, but I feel like it's healthier than the way I would handle it.
And then there's this very important conversation about, like, light and dark, and he's relating it to backgammon. And then he says he wants to tell Walt a secret, and the secret is never revealed what it is. So what is your thoughts on this?
I think that, again, I just have this feeling that Locke is very intuitive and like or knows something, and I think it's related to. It's going to be one of two things. It's either going to be something about his past that he hasn't let anybody else know, and like this is his way of like making the first connection with somebody on the island, or it is something to do with like maybe he's been here before and he has escaped and he just knows that it's like near impossible to do so. Like it gives me like I can't help, but I'm not an expert on the Jurassic Park movies, but there's like that guy who's like been to Jurassic Park a few times and like that kind of, I just got like that vibe from Locke. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much, if at anything, like I always am going to go back to Jurassic Park until I know more things about Lost. Like, oh wow, weird creature that's apparently giant and like chasing him on a weird island. Like, is it a dinosaur? Like, I don't like.
Who knows? Okay, so where were you left off on your notes? Sorry.
So we just killed the polar bear, and I think that the next thing I have is that they kind of they say that Sawyer is the prisoner because he would have. How would he have known that there was an air marshal on board? By the way, it's 2004. Everybody was aware that there were air marshals on board. To exactly your point, this is post 9/11. We were absolutely bonkers about airport security and plane security. So I had to assume that, especially on an international flight, there's got to be at least a couple air marshals on board, right?
Yeah.
So they then put the blame on him as the prisoner. And then it's quickly, I literally wrote, MAGA dude is prisoner? And then I said, never mind, Kate is. Because it is revealed that Sawyer knows that Kate is the prisoner.
I don't think he knows that.
Oh, I
she's
thought
the
that that's
prisoner.
what that conversation was, where he was like, "You're not fooling anybody," essentially, kind of thing.
No, I think he is. I mean, maybe. What I gathered from that scene was him trying to be like, I know what kind of girl you are. And she's like, you have no idea what kind of girl I am. Like, he's trying to like.
Okay, so it's actually the opposite, where he's trying to basically sexualize her or something like that.
He's like, oh, you think you're a bad girl? Like, I know what kind of girl you are. You think you're a bad girl. And she's like, you have no idea what kind of girl I am.
And then she's actually a bad girl. Okay,
yeah.
That makes sense. So then you find out that not only. Okay, so this, I have to say, I know this is supposed to be dramatic. I fucking died laughing at this part. Because.
I know the part, exactly.
I'm sorry. So they show Kate is on board. She's next to the air marshal, so that she has the handcuffs on, and the air marshal is revealed to be Shrapnel Guy. That's the thing. She could like literally, the plane starts crashing and she has the handcuffs on, and like the Shrapnel Guy, the air marshal, gets hit with something on his head and immediately starts bleeding and slinks back into his chair. And she's trying so hard to get the oxygen mask, and she can't with her handcuffs. So she like gets the key, all this other stuff, and gets the mask and and undoes her handcuffs, puts the mask on her, and then they put the camera back. How does the air marshal have a mask on? Nobody put the mask on him. And then it says, how did he get mask on? Like, that's the part that died, is like he's bleeding from the head. Kate tried so hard to put her own mask on. You don't see her put the mask on him, but yet he's just sitting there bleeding, passed out with a mask on his face. So that was either like, there's an issue with continuity here, or somebody did put the mask on him, and maybe that is actually a crucial plot point, but
I'll tell you right now, it is not a crucial plot point. I'm pretty sure that was a production error.
Don't you think that's so funny?
It is.
I literally was freaking out going, how did he get the mask on? How did he get the air mask on? Jesus. So fucking funny.
I love this scene. I remember when I first watched the first season for the very first time and seeing the graphics, because this is like 2004, of the plane falling apart mid-air. And I was like, oh, I think this is when I was sold, was I'm going to love this show, because they are going above and beyond to make this like as visceral and as visual as they possibly can.
So
which I
just
love.
in case people are trying to contextualize this, Dylan is very impressed with a camera shaking back and forth.
I am. I loved it. Okay,
I know it's more than that, but I'm just joking.
But like in 2004, what other show can you think of had this style and flair to it?
I'm sorry, Desperate Housewives.
Desperate Housewives was drama. It was not.
Did you see the tornado episode?
That was years later. That was years
later.
later.
No, it was 2 years later. It was like 2006 or 7.
That was a messy show.
I know, it was so bad. It was good. Believe me, it was a great
good.
show.
I watched a little bit, but it was good. Yeah, from what I saw.
Listen, in 3 years when we're done covering both of these shows, I think Desperate Housewives should be on the list of things that we.
I might be down
Desperate
for
Housewives
that.
and the Golden Girls, and just be like, okay, let's look at the Housewives in very two different ways.
That'd be pretty cool,
Anyway,
actually.
I know.
So we get to after the flashback. Shrapnel Guy wakes up somehow,
And he says, "Where is her?" Nope.
Where is her? Could you imagine if he said that? He just got up and said, "Where is her?
Where is her?"
He
Wow.
He says
No, where
he
is
warns
she?
of her. Yeah, where is she? He's warning
Where
of
is she?
her.
Yeah.
And we clearly know that it's about Kate.
Correct. And then they cut to Kate up on top of the island and such, yeah. And this is where the very final part of the episode happens, where they finally figure out they get a bar on the transceiver, and they're listening, and it's some woman talking in French.
I wrote down exactly what she said if you want me to say
Okay,
it.
go ahead.
So Shannon can speak French, and she is listening to this transmission that's on the transceiver that's been repeating for, we learn eventually, 16 years and like 5 months. So this is, someone has been here, like they were here 16 years, 5 months ago, and they sent this. And the message says, "Please help me, come get me. I'm alone now, island alone. Please someone come. The others, they are dead. It killed them all." What are your thoughts?
I mean, my initial thought has to be that is whatever this like monster thing is killed them. Like that's what I think it is. Maybe she's talking about the island itself. Like the island itself has killed them all. But yeah, I don't know. I really feel like based off of the way the plane crashes with having like 3 separate areas, there's some kind of weird force here that keeps people here. And you can't leave, essentially. So I don't know. I'm very interested to see. But 16 years, what this tells me is that there likely is other people on the island somewhere. And that I think that we're going to come across other people.
I like that.
So that is my theory for this. But I loved this episode. I think I liked it even more than the first episode. This was a 10 out of 10 for me because it answered some questions immediately, but gave me 5 other ones to think about. And I'm like totally now like, I felt like in the first episode, I was sitting on the edge of the pool, kicking my feet in the water. And this time I just like submerged right in. I was like, all right, bye. I'm in.
I'm ready to swim. Adult swim time.
I'm ready here. Like, I'm going to swim. And if the only way to like survive is to like come up with conspiracy theories, like, bitch, I'm floating. Here we go. Let's do this.
So I want to get into some viewer comments.
Okay.
That we had after our first episode. We first have Tyler, who suggested an amazing segment that we should do.
Is this Tyler Lyons of My Weekly Meltdown?
It is.
We love Tyler Lyons of My Weekly Meltdown. Yes.
Yeah, so Tyler suggested that we have an MVP and an LVP of both The Nanny and Lost. So you would give the MVP and LVP of Lost. I would give the MVP and LVP. And then we can track throughout all the episodes who's got the most MVPs, who's got the most LVPs. So do you want to start or do you want me to?
Why don't you start? Because we started with The Nanny.
Okay.
So there you go.
So my MVP for the first episode, I'm going to have to give to Yetta, clearly.
Okay.
Star person of the episode, amazing, literally has the episode like made for her. My LVP, I hate to say this, is probably going to go to Fran.
Hey.
Only because it's like the one, I think this may be the one of the few times she's ever going to get LVP. And it's not because of her doing, it's just because the episode wasn't that great. And honestly, the way that they wrote her character, she was just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think she knows what she's doing. They can do better.
I agree. And I will, just as a side note, because I didn't mention this before, you're going to find that a lot of these characters are based off of Fran's actual family. So her parents' real names are Sylvia and Morty, and that her grandma is Yetta. Excuse me. But these are caricatures of her family. So real tea is that when her grandmother Yetta saw Yetta on television, she apparently said to Fran, Why did you make her like that? I'm not senile. I'm not crazy, blah, 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 blah. And as she was eating a pastrami sandwich with like all of the juices just going down her arm, and she like licked up. She's like, I'm not gross like that. So like So it's just providing more context there. I would agree with those. I think for Lost, my MVP is going to go to Saeed. I mean, he is really the one that comes up with the plan, the execution. He defies expectations and is just an all-around boss bitch, and I love him for it. Yes. I'm going to say my LVP... It's a tie right now in my mind. It's between Walt's dad. What's Walt's dad's name?
I think it's Michael.
Michael, dude, you are clueless, bro. You do not just say, I'm going to buy you a new dog. And then, I mean, we did miss the part where Jack tells Michael, oh, yeah, I saw the dog. He's perfectly fine. He's out in the woods somewhere. So he does now know that the dog's alive. But I just felt like, dude, I understand that this is like a really bad time for you and like your son, but like you're just failing the parent department. But no, that's, you know what? He does not, the LVP. The LVP is Jen. What the fuck, bro? With your...
Call him out.
No, like... If Sun hadn't unbuttoned her thing, I would have given it to her because I'd been like, "How dare you let a man talk to you like that?"
Oh,
I'm not gonna actually judge people for that. I understand that abuse victims are like definitely in a different situation, but no, clearly Jin has something going on. Whether it's a secret he wants to protect or whatever the case is, Jin. There's a mystery around him, but he's someone that I didn't find overly favorable, even though he's trying to go around and serve food and such to people. It doesn't come across because he's genuinely trying to help. It comes across like he needs favors for something. And so that's, I don't know. I don't like him. He skeeves me out. LVP.
Well, if anyone wants to make a wiki of all of our MVPs and LVPs, and we can track throughout all of our episodes, that'd be pretty cool.
Great. But, well, if we're going to do that, why don't we quickly do it for the pilot episode since we didn't do it for those?
Ooh, okay, I like that. So my MVP from the pilot episode would be absolutely Fran. MVP, Fran, hands down. LVP, I would have to give to... What, Danny? Is Danny her boyfriend?
Danny Imperiello.
Yeah, Danny.
Imperielli.
LVP, absolutely Danny.
Trash.
Get out of here. Trash. How about you?
MVP for the first episode has to be Jack. Like, he just is going around saving everybody, whole 9 yards. LVP for the first episode is going to be Shannon.
I knew you were going to say that.
Turned down chocolate and was a bitch. So, no, she's the LVP.
That's accurate. I do want to get into one more viewer comment that we had submitted by @Kapunkt on Twitter, who let me know that I got a lot of my facts wrong in the first episode, which we love it. We love a fact check. Please and always fact check your sources. I clearly didn't. So some things to note are the pilot episodes did not air together, like I said, which my husband, when we were watching this episode, said he did not like pilot episode 2 because it didn't have as coherent of a plot. And I told him it's because he didn't watch the first pilot episode. He only saw the second episode. He didn't watch the first. And I was like, I think they are meant to be viewed together in a way, because you get the beginning, middle, and end of the arc of the transceiver. They find the transceiver, they fix the transceiver, they get the message. And that's kind of like the arc of the 2 episodes. So they did not air together. I learned that there was a lot of network issues between the production team and the network, which led to why Jack was kept on the show and they killed off the pilot instead. So thank you, Kapunkt, for submitting those comments. If you guys have any future comments about Lost, send them over to me. I am @8BitDylan. And if you have any for the nanny, right over here.
@AugustaWind11. Send them to me. And that's the other thing, too. If you find that we're in a convo on Twitter and you're about to say something spoilerly, that's not a word, but if you're going to say a spoiler about one of the shows, make sure that Dylan is not tagged for the nanny and make sure I'm not tagged for Lost, because no offense, I love that you're interacting with us, but I don't want to see spoilers about The Lost, and I know that he doesn't want to see spoilers about The Nanny. So just make sure that you uncheck us from the conversations if you're going to reply all. But please continue to send your comments and questions, and leave those ratings and reviews. We are now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify in addition to YouTube, and we would love to hear your ratings and reviews. If you wouldn't mind, it would help to boost us up a lot. There are a lot of people who are now tuning into The Nanny because it just became on streaming services. It would help our content a lot if you guys could like spam the ratings, write a little review for us on Apple Podcasts especially, so that when people are searching The Nanny, we pop up on their search. And
advertise us if you can on some of your favorite discussion boards. Are you talking on Reddit about Lost or The Nanny? Are you talking about it on pro boards? That ages me. Are you talking about it on anywhere?
Are you talking about it on Ask Jeeves?
Ask Jeeves.
Do you remember Ask Jeeves?
Yetta comes out and she's like, do you remember it on Searchosaurus?
Did you want a Malama?
A Malama.
And just like
I love it. So this was so much fun, Beth. Thank you so much for.
Thank you so much.
I love that we've been doing this Hot Mess Moments podcast. I hope you guys are enjoying it. And my name is 8-Bit Dylan, or Dylan Zahner. You can check me out at 8-Bit Dylan on Twitter. And
I'm Augusta Win11, also known as Beth. You can check me out on Twitter and Twitch and all those other fun things. A special shout out to our good friend and editor, Stefanduck, who is also, you can find him on Twitch, twitch.tv/STEFANDUCK. And he is a wonderful streamer. Please give him a follow. And he is doing a lot of work behind the scenes to help make us even better sound quality than you would normally get. And also a special shout out to Kyle Smith, who did all of our branding for Hot Mess Moments. So if you like what you see for our background, for our logo and such, and you would love to get in touch with them, contact me. I'll get you in touch with him. He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Totally. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at Hot Mess Moments on Twitter. This has been our recap of the second episode of both The Nanny and Lost, and we will see you next week on Thursday with another spicy hot mess take on episode 3. And because HBO Max has all the episodes all out of sync, make sure if you're going to be watching with us for The Nanny.
Here Comes the Brood.
Yeah. No, it's My Fair Nanny.
Is
the third episode of The Nanny. So on HBO Max, don't watch what they say is episode 3. Watch My Fair Nanny.
Okay, so Here Comes the Brood is episode 5 I was thinking of. Sorry, I was getting all confused. But you're right. My Fair Nanny is episode 3. So if you want to watch that to keep up with us, make sure you're watching that, not whatever they have listed.
Yep. All right, we'll see you guys on Thursday. Bye!